Today I'm talking about and so far we've talked about creating the plan, creating the budget. The next thing you want to do is enter the budget into your financial software. So I'm using QuickBooks for an example, but it doesn't have to be QuickBooks. And so you enter your budget, and the first thing you want to do before you enter the budget is create a chart of account that matches the budget. Because in that way you can be sure you're comparing apples to apples. So we can see here in our budget that we talked about in the previous video that we had a line item for service income, then we track direct materials, and we said we want that to be 0 because it's going to be incoming and outgoing. So basically we'll get the charge and we'll invoice that to our customers. So the net effect should be 0. We track our labor costs and then all our overhead. Now, this is the category that we talked about when we developed the budget. Now, depending on your business, it could be different. You don't have to have just the materials, labor, and overhead. Some people might have more than 3 main headings, depending on what type of business you have. Just remember, whatever the structure is whatever serves the information you're trying to get from your system. So depending on the kind of information you're trying to pull out, that determines the kind of input you pull in. So that's why we have the planning process. The planning process in part 1 helps us define what we need so we can create the right system or chart of accounts to track that information. So now we've created a chart of accounts that matches our budget. We've entered the budget into our system. So once that's all done, the setup is mostly done. So now what's left is on a regular basis, we need to enter data into our financial software. So that data is done daily, weekly, however suits your business. Now, this is not a lesson about how to enter data into QuickBooks or a financial software. I'm just trying to go through the major concepts here so you can, if you're already doing this, you can kind of incorporate into the practices you already have. So one thing you have to be careful for is when you're entering data is the classification. You have to make sure you're consistent with how you classify data, because garbage in, garbage out, if you're not consistent in the way you classify data, then you don't have meaningful data. For instance, how do you know when I say I spent $365 on job supplies? When I click there, I should see all of the job supplies that makes up that $365. If in this job supplies I have marketing, I have meals, I have advertising, then when I look at that job supplies number, it's nonsense and I can't really compare it to the budget. But when everything is classified correctly, at least I know I have correct data in my software and I can compare correctly to my budget and see where I am. That's very useful information I can use to make my decisions for my business. While entering data, something you want to make sure you do while you're entering data is you assign any cost that can be traced directly to that customer. So that way you can actually run a profit by customer report, and you can look at each customer, see what income you have, see what expenses you have, and see if which customers are profitable and which ones are not. Any cost that cannot be assigned to a customer because it's something you buy that's used for all customers, but you can't trace any customer. It's just general overhead, which will be allocated to all customers, just like we did in the budgeting process. There are many ways to allocate costs overhead to different customers, but the easiest way is to download to Excel. And then you have to get data for how many hours, labor hours you've used for this period. So here we can see for this business we use 32 hours, and for this business we use 97 hours. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to get the rate for overhead we calculated in the budgeting process. So we see we have a rate of 1087 from the budgeting process. So we multiply that by the 1087 to get a 351.90 for ABC and 1055.70 for BDE. Now we can make adjustment in QuickBooks if we want to, but I don't really recommend it because you can get the analysis you need from an Excel file. And then so we go ahead and we enter that, and then we subtract that from our overhead. And then whatever is not allocated, I had made adjustments before, so I removed it just so you can see what's happening. Whatever is not allocated is going to show up here as your difference. So this amount is the amount allocated plus amounts that's directly traceable to any job. So anything that's directly traceable to any job does not have to be allocated. So this 181,740 is not allocated. Now that's a problem. That's way up from our budget. So the next thing we want to do is, okay, where are we way up from our budget? And we want to make adjustments there. through this one-off is the small equipment and tools. And the small equipment and tools are normally bought to be used over a couple of years, so normally it should be depreciated. So the amount that really should have been taken out in this budgeting period, because we expected the equipment to be used over 60 months, should have been this. So once you make that adjustment, you can see that we're closer to what we budgeted, which is better. So we're still in line with our budget. Anything that's still over the 75 cents will have to be added to our previous overhead rate of $10.87, because that's what our customers going forward will be charged. And that's by how much we need to increase our prices, because our cost is above what we budgeted. So which is why the comparison is very important, because over time you want to see how your cost is changing, and while you might even go back to adjust your previous customers' revenue, I mean, not so quickly, you want to make sure that any cost increases are passed to your future customers. So that way, overall, you're still profitable even when you get to the end of the budgeting year. Once you're done with entering the data, now you're ready to look at the information that's been provided for you and actually make sense of it and use that to make decisions. So next, in the next video, we'll talk about looking at information and talking about what it means for your business. Like what you see? Go ahead and click the subscribe button on the very bottom of this video. I look forward to seeing you in future videos.